Hi guys, in today's video we're going to be painting a Space Marine from start to finish. We're going to be just brush painting this Space Marine. As I'm always asked, please do a tutorial using brush only without the airbrush. But before we get started, I want to say a huge thank you to my YouTube channel sponsors, Goblin Gaming. If you check the description box down below, you'll find a direct link to Goblin Gaming's web store, and this link greatly helps my YouTube channel every time you purchase anything from their store, so please use that link if you do intend to purchase anything. I painted the Space Marine up to a very pleasing tabletop standard, and this is the very first time in a long time that I've base coated and highlighted a miniature without the airbrush, so it was a great opportunity for me to dust off some of my brush painting skills. Well, I hope you really enjoy this video guys. As always, it's going to be a long one, so go grab yourselves a nice hot drink or maybe a nice ice cold beer and we'll get started with a tutorial. The very first thing I do after building the miniature is I make sure it's primed using Games Workshop's Corax White Primer. It's very important to prime your miniatures before painting them guys, to get nice smooth even finishes and also to protect the paint of the miniature. We're going to be using Reaper's Master Series paints today for the majority of the Space Marine. These paints are very hard to get in the UK, apart from getting them from Dark Star Miniatures where they sell all of the Reaper paints in triads. This came in a set of 3 paints known as the Reaper Triad series. Here I've thinned down the Ultramarine Shadow colour with a little water, and it's roughly about 1 drop of water to 2 drops of paint. And I'm just very loosely painting all of the Space Marine with the Ultramarine Shadow colour. I'm using a very large brush to do this. I'm using a size 3 Winsor & Newton Series 7 brush, and it's important to note that I'm not worrying if I get the Ultramarine Shadow colour on any other part of the miniature, as it will be covered up with subsequent paint layers later on. I'm going to speed the footage up now guys, as it can be quite boring watching a miniature get base coated, so I'm going to do that now. And here's what the miniature looks like after being base coated using the Ultramarine Shadow colour. Now we're going to use Ultramarine Blue, and we're going to leave the Ultramarine Shadow colour in all of the recesses. So as I start painting the shoulder pauldron here, you'll notice that I'm going very close to the edge of the trim but not right up to it, and this is going to leave a nice shadow layer in the recesses. Again guys, I'm going to speed the footage up now guys. And here you can see what the miniature looks like after all of the ultramarine blue base colour has been laid down. Now I'm going to start putting highlights down, and I've thinned the paint down 1:1 with water, and the paint we're using is ultramarine highlight. And as you can see, I'm just highlighting the top surfaces of the shoulder pauldrons. I'm very careful not to go over the top with the highlights here guys, and after a while I dip the brush in a little bit of water and I feather out the highlights. Here you can see me doing it now, and I'm just pulling the highlights down towards the bottom. Time to speed things up again guys. And here's what the miniature looks like after being highlighted. Now we're going to add gloss varnish to the shoulder pads. The reason we're adding gloss varnish is this is going to make the decals sit much more flatter on the surface. So I add a bit of gloss varnish to the shoulder pauldrons, let them thoroughly dry, and then we're going to come in with some decals. To help adhere the decals to the surface, we're going to use Microset from Microscale Industries. Here I'm dipping in a little bit of Microset and placing it onto the shoulder pauldron, and I'm just going to put the decal on the shoulder pauldron like so. I dip in the brush with a little bit more Microset, place it over the decal, and I'll leave the decals to dry for about 15 to 20 minutes before flattening them out with a cotton bud, or a Q-tip as it's known. After the decals had fully been flattened out, I'm coming in with some ultra matte varnish from AK Interactive to get rid of that horrid gloss varnish finish. Here you can see I'm placing the matte varnish onto the shoulder pauldrons. It's important not to let it pull too much in the recesses and remove excess matte varnish, otherwise you might be left with a frosted look. And here you can see that the decals now look like they've been hand painted onto the ultramarine, as they're perfectly flat and matte. All the gold on the ultramarine is going to be painted with Vallejo liquid gold, old gold, but it's important that you have some rubbing alcohol or isopropanol, or in this case Vallejo brush cleaner, to clean out your brushes after you've used the gold. Water alone will not clean your brushes out, guys, so make sure that you have some rubbing alcohol or brush cleaner to make sure you can clean the brushes after you've painted with the gold. All the silver metallics are going to be painted with the Army Painter's gunmetal. All the pages are painted with Games Workshop's Rhinox hide. Zandri dust is placed onto a sponge that's been stippled onto some paper towel to remove most of the paint, and then I'm just stippling very lightly onto the pouches to give an old cracked leather look. The Army Painter's Quick Shade Dark Tone is going to be painted onto all of the silver metallics. Games Workshop's layer paint Wild Rider Red is painted onto the lenses of the Space Marine. Here you can see I've rolled the bristles of the brush into a nice sharp point, and I'm able to get really fine details and paint the lenses relatively easily. Plate mail metal is used to highlight all the silver metallics. The Army Painter's matte black is thinned 1:1 with water and painted around the base. I'd much rather paint in 2 thin layers on the base and make sure that it's going to come on nice and smoothly, as opposed to 1 thick layer and you'll be left with brush stroke marks behind. And here we have the finished Ultramarine. It was great fun painting the ultramarine with just a brush only, as I'm so used to using my airbrush now, guys, so it was a great change. Also, I hope you liked this video, and if you did, guys, maybe I'll do some more tutorials with a brush only as well in future. If you want to use the same Reaper Master Series paints that I've used in this tutorial, guys, I'll put a link to Dark Star Miniatures link in the description box down below, where you'll be able to find these paints in the UK. I think they're readily available in the US and some other countries, but in the UK the only place I know that sells them, I believe, is Dark Star Miniatures. I also want to say a huge thank you once again to my YouTube channel sponsors. Please don't forget to use that link if you do purchase anything from Goblin Gaming. And thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.